Coming up next on The Mikey Martin Show.
I believe that every problem that we face is a challenge of some sort, and every challenge has a solution. I believe that oftentimes recovery is recentering yourself. If you're practicing incorrectly, you'll never get better at the thing that you're working at. Yeah, we call it escapism, where basically you're like, I do not want to face the things that I'm facing. The reason why we as people seek escapism is because we're in pain. The really cool thing about this situation is that it's solvable.
Guys, welcome back to the show. I am so excited today. Today we have a special friend of mine. His name is Luke Wright. He's a data scientist. He's working right now. He's getting his degree done. He's just about to finish up, and then he's headed off into the workforce, hoping someday to maybe even have his own consulting firm that can help with data science. Luke, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate being here.
Guys, I'm so excited to have Luke on because I think the way his brain works is amazing. I try to be more like Luke. He has this ability. It's kind of a family trait, actually. I know his brother. They all kind of have this tone that they talk through, almost like they are like modern day philosophers, where you can hear that they have this deep understanding of something. And not only are they telling you what they think about it, but they're kind of also, you can see they're like visually picking it apart as they're telling you what it is. So I'm so excited. You guys will see what I mean, but I'm so excited to have Luke on. Luke, can you tell us just, we know your name, Luke Wright. What's kind of your brand? What's your mission in life? What are you all about?
So, my brand, I'm a mathematician. I got back from like a mission a few years ago. I thought I was going to be like a finance major in school, but I eventually turned toward like mathematics and toward data science because I really liked the analytical side of things. I've always enjoyed logic and working through things and finding solutions to problems. And kind of my mission in life is always tied back to this philosophy that I believe that every problem that we face is a challenge of some sort, and every challenge has a solution. And my purpose is to find solutions and solve problems for myself. But even more than that, one thing that I really love doing is empowering other people to be able to solve the solutions, to find the solutions and solve the challenges that they face. I like accepting challenges enthusiastically just for the sake of, accepting it for the sake of like having a good problem to solve. And I try to work competently and have tenacity and get things done.
I love it. Guys, you can already tell. I mean, before we even get into it, you can tell Luke is going to be a high performer and that he already is because he's leaning into the fact that he's tenacious and he's a good problem solver, but he's using his strengths. He's very analytical. He's very logical. He's very, he loves math. He loves the fact that he knows that there is something causing this and that there's also a solution. And so he's living his philosophy through his strengths. It's an amazing thing. So great. Luke, thank you for coming on. Guys, Luke actually told me, he's like, I did some preparation for this. He's like, because it's an interesting topic. So I'm excited to hear his thoughts. So Luke, for you, what is recovery? And more specifically, like, what do you do for recovery? What's even the tone or the focus while you're doing it?
Okay, so it's really interesting. Whenever I think of recovery, the first thing that I think of is rest in a way. Like there's always a time that you're going to need to rest from like the hard things that you're doing. And that doesn't seem like all that like new of a concept. But as I was, kind of like researching into some of the questions that you gave me like beforehand and everything, I kind of like started thinking in a little bit of a different direction. And I believe that oftentimes recovery is recentering yourself. It has less to do with reclaiming your energy because that's just resting. Right. I think that true recovery is all about you kind of straying away from your path of engagement in whatever you're doing. And recovery is you pulling yourself back to center and putting yourself back on the path.
And I guess, I mean, we'll get more into that, but like, is there a specific way that you like to do that? Or is there maybe, I don't know, is there a practice that you think is most effective in helping you realign with your center?
More often than not, the way that I'm able to return to my center is actually through going and stopping like the work that I do, going and finding a friend or a family member or somebody that I trust and sitting down and having a long philosophical conversation about ideas or something like that. Kind of about like mindset in a way,
Sure.
and a bunch of other things like that, and then pulling myself back to center and charging forward again. You know,
that philosophical, is that conversation, the philosophical one, is that more like about your work that you were working on, or is it always about just something totally different?
it's about the work that you're working on, but like less of the specifics of the work that you're working on, but the how of how you're doing it, you know?
Whoa, that's a big difference, because it's the how. So instead of actually worrying about the particulars and the little things, it's going back to your methods or maybe your practices about how you're going about finding, I'm guessing, a solution.
Yeah. Well, and also taking in mind that like all of the opinions that I have are like regarding this subject are just opinions, you know, that
Sure.
I found that they work for me. And but I don't profess to be in any sort of like psychologist or neuroscientist or anything like that on how all of it works. But I found that in my personal experience, recovery, as far as recovery is concerned, I feel an abundance of energy just almost flowing through me all the time, and very like little need or desire to rest if I am engaged in what I'm doing, if I feel fully in it, you know?
Sure.
It's like the work that I do becomes play. It becomes rest. It becomes just something enjoyable
Less
that
strenuous.
I don't really have to stop necessarily. Like I'll rest physically, I'll rest my mind, I'll go off and I'll do something fun every now and then, but it's never something where it's like, man, like I'm just um during those times that like I'm going off and kind of like taking a little bit of a break from the actual problem at hand. um I don't consider that recovering. I consider that more resting. And I think that there's a bit of a difference
Sure.
between the things.
It's more just taking a pause rather than doing something to kind of proactively rebuild.
Exactly. But then again, as far as like recovering is concerned, like you know those times where like you're working and like trying to like exist inside of your purpose and everything, and then all of a sudden you just start feeling like you want to avoid the problem that you're trying to solve. You kind of want to exit from it. You want
Approach
to distract yourself
avoidance syndrome. You don't want to tackle the problem.
Yeah, you don't want to think about it anymore, you know? I've come to find that like whenever I start entering into that phase, that's where I really need to recover, you know?
Sure.
And I found that the recovery is all about my approach. It's all about I'm doing something wrong.
Well, it sounds like your mindset is a huge thing, only because what it sounds like, because you come on here and you're like, immediately you're like, look, I know there's always a solution. But the thing is, if you know there's always a solution and you really have that as a core belief, like you're not usually going to be deterred, because you just go, look, if I keep looking, I find it. But the thing is, by the time you need to actually realign, it's probably because your mindset has shifted and you're starting to go, man, I don't know if I'll find this answer this time, or it might take too long. But as soon as you realign to there's always a solution, and I find it.
Well, yeah, no, that's definitely true. But I would say even like further on that, like further along those lines, kind of drilling down into it even more.
Sure.
If you're practicing incorrectly, you'll never get better at the thing that you're working at. If you're trying to solve problems and you're not approaching the problems in the right way, or there's something wrong about like your mindset or your methods, you're not going to get any better. You're going to feel like you're beating your head against a wall, and you need to reset something. You need to re-examine how you're doing things, and then you'll be able to effectively move forward in your purpose.
That's so huge. That's huge. No, and that's kind of the point of this podcast. We're trying to go over what's false recovery and what's real recovery, because so many people are like, look, I took a break. I watched 15 episodes of my favorite show, and I played like 4 hours of video games. Why don't I feel like I'm ready to get back to work? And so you're totally right. The way you actually approach it, the way you do it, if you're doing it incorrectly, you can't expect to find the solution.
Yeah, well, no, it's totally true. And things like going and watching, like binge watching YouTube videos or binge watching a show on Netflix or something like that. It's all well, we call it escapism in my family. We call it we call it escapism, where basically you're like, I do not want to face the things that I'm facing, because it's hard for some reason. There's something wrong about that's like happening in your head. And you don't want to think about the problems that you're facing, something's up. And so real recovery comes by essentially finding out what's actually going on with you, resetting that, and then putting yourself back like
new
on the path.
Yeah, I love that. So here's the thing. So you've grown to a point where you're like, look, I know what I love doing. It's not really strenuous on me because it's more of a game almost, and it's something that you enjoy doing. But I'm curious, have you ever had like a time where you had some sort of a breakdown due to lack of recovery? You didn't recover for long enough, you pushed yourself too long. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and oftentimes as you continue working, you begin to, I don't exactly know what it is, but you begin to just sort of like go side to side and like go off of the path. And this is what I found for me. Like if I went into, say, a school semester, totally engaged, totally ready for it, and I started working and like doing my homework, taking tests and everything like that, and just going through the grind again and again and again, eventually it's almost like I begin to lose my way, and I begin to like forget the meaning of like why I'm doing what I'm doing. And all of a sudden I start feeling a heavy need to escape, a heavy need to escape and to stop thinking about the problems. And it's usually at those times that I go and I find somebody who can help reset me. I actually had like a big moment at the beginning of this semester, and then like the middle of last semester where I felt that I kind of felt that breakdown. That was like, why am I doing this? This is hard, which is so weird.
That's exactly. But that's how it feels. Everybody gets to the end of the semester and they're like, do I really need a degree? Like, do I?
Yeah, well, and like I've got the logic side of my brain saying like, of course, of course I'm going to finish this, and of course I know I can finish this. But then I've got my feelings saying, this sucks. This really sucks. But see, the problem with like that mindset is I'm just like, there was a time when this rocked, So if there's something wrong, it's on me. If this isn't rocking, if this isn't just like the coolest thing that I've ever done, nothing's really changed,
Circumstances are the same.
Yeah, the circumstances are the same. I'm working around, I'm technically working around other people. I'm learning things that are cool and interesting. Like, why do I not feel engaged? Why do I feel burned out? And more often than not, it's because I have forgotten, I've kind of forgotten why I'm doing what I'm doing, or I'm doing something wrong. Like I'm practicing in the wrong way. So there was this book that I actually really, really like, highly recommend. It's called Engagement Magic. And funny enough, I got it from a human resource management class that I took, because I did a minor in business management. And as a mathematician, I like went into that class thinking like, this is going to be like a soft science class or whatever, I don't think I'm going to learn all that much, but I actually learned a ton in the class. But when I read the book, the whole point of the book was there are 5 necessary and key components to being fully engaged. And in my opinion, being fully engaged means having that abundance of energy that just drives you forward all the time. But those key elements were the acronym MAGIC. It was, you have meaning, you feel like you have meaning in what you're doing. There is meaning in what you're doing. You know your why. You feel like you have autonomy in what you're doing. You feel like you control your own actions and you have like a certain amount of being able to use your creativity and go down this particular path. So meaning, autonomy, you feel like you're growing. So growth, impact, and connectivity. So you have to feel like you have your why, you control what you're doing, you're growing in your position, your actions are actually having an impact, and you feel connected to the people that you're working with. And what during those times, whenever I broke down, I always found out that something, one or a combination of those like 5 elements were missing. I wasn't feeling connected to the people that I was working with, or I felt like I was just beating my head against assignment after assignment and being like, this isn't getting me anywhere. I like my actions are having no impact, and I feel like I'm not growing. I still feel like dumb because it's not coming easily to me or something, you know, or the meaning thing. It's like, why am I doing this? You know, and all of a sudden you burn out. You burn out when you don't feel engaged. I mean, you'll need rest even if you are engaged, but at that point it's just rest. It's not recovery, you know? And so I found that whenever I hit burnout, and whenever I actually needed recovery, whenever I needed to go and have those conversations with like a family member or a friend, I would go and sit down, and those conversations were always driven towards me figuring out, what am I missing? I don't feel connected to people. Okay, well, is there anything that I can do to control that? Yes, I can. I can go and I can talk to people. I can go and I can proactively be friends with other people. If I want to feel connected, I can do that. Or if it's something like, I don't feel like I'm growing. Well, that's stupid. That's not true. You know that you're growing. Look back at the progress that you've made and change your mindset, you know? And
it sounds like
I found that
it's the key. It sounds like
it's the what?
it's the key. I mean, it sounds like your perspective and everything. Yeah, no, I wrote down here, I was like, your perspective totally relates to not just how quick you get back up, but also your rate of burnout. Like the longer you can maintain and remember that you're actually growing and you're actually, you have meaning and autonomy and everything. It's like the longer you can actually feel that and maintain that perspective you're not going to burn out ever. I mean, as long as you really feel that.
Yeah. Well, and see, I think that that's the real challenge with recovery. What recovery really should be is it should be an introspective dive into yourself. Mikey, if like I were you, it's you recovering is you saying, what's going on right now in Mikey's brain? You know,
right.
How do I feel about the things that I'm doing? And do I feel like what I'm doing has meaning? Do I feel like I'm controlling what I'm doing? And do I actually feel like I'm growing and having an impact, and that I've got friends, and connections with the people around me? At that point in time, you get tired and you need rest, but you don't really get burned out. You just feel
and it just points out it's self-ownership. Recovery is something that you're going to do, and it's a choice. And you can do, it sounds like, at least from what we talked about today, you can either choose hey, we're going to try and do the escape or escapism or whatever we call it.
And I'll admit, I still fight using escapism all the time. I'm like,
right.
Rick and Morty is looking really, really appealing right now,
Totally. But again, no one else is going to help you recover because you need to know what's going on in you, and you're the only one who knows that.
Yeah. Well, so Tyson actually gave me a really interesting perspective. We talked about escapism, and he talked about how the reason why we as people seek escapism is because we're in pain. We're in some sort of psychological pain. And that pain can come from, I believe that pain can come from any of those 5 things being missing in your life. But what's happening is that psychological pain comes and you don't want to think about it because it hurts to think about it, It hurts to try and break down your problems and maybe even figure out that you're doing something wrong, or but if you go down that path and if you do choose to think about it and you choose to especially work it out with somebody else, and just talk through what's going on, you will be able to identify what the problem is. And that is half the battle of coming up with a solution. It takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to sit down and say, this is why I'm unhappy. I go to work and I feel like I'm not friends with anybody there, you know? And for that reason, I just feel like it's this grind. I don't feel like connected or appreciated or anything. And that's why I'm getting burned out. And it's
Right.
like, okay, you are in pain. That's what's going on. And it totally makes sense why you're in pain.
Well,
You
and
know?
people start to associate the pain with whatever they're working on. And it's like, then they want to avoid it. I mean, when in reality, it's like, if you'd either just take a new perspective, or for me, most of the time, I lose hope whenever it's like, I don't have a plan. If I feel like I can't control what's going on, but as soon as I kind of take self ownership, recognize that I can change me, and it's like, that's when I start to get my perspective back and start to go, oh, here's what I can do.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
suddenly
totally.
I'm not as in as much pain.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when you feel like your pain is inevitable versus your pain is within your control, you know?
Absolutely.
Like
Some sort of a
you,
tool, something you can do.
exactly, exactly. You can change something. But isn't that like it's such an encouraging thought to know that the things that you're going through, you can control how you perceive them, you know? Um,
Well, and
do
some
you,
people don't believe that though.
I
Like
know some people
they
really don't
think,
believe
no,
that.
that's just the way it is. I can't
Well,
change my perspective. How could I change it?
well, here's what I think. I think that a lot of those people who say that, either they secretly like being in pain, or
That's a real thing. Some people
yeah,
really, they like the pain. I think when I was younger, I loved victim mentality because it gave me an excuse for everything,
oh
but it
yeah,
didn't get me
yeah.
anywhere.
It's a great way of escaping out of your problems when all of a sudden it's not your fault. You're a good person and you're just the victim of everything. But I
Yeah.
think that on the other side of the coin, there are a bunch of people that do say something to the effect of like the pain is inevitable. And I think that what they're really trying to say is that you shouldn't fight your feelings, which is something that I truly and firmly believe. I think that a lot of times people with the like I'm totally like the master of myself and everything, sometimes they start going a little bit too far in the direction of I control my mind so much to like make it so that I can't feel sadness. And it's like,
Right.
no, you should definitely allow yourself to feel that because it's a directing force. Your emotions move you forward. They move you in
Right.
directions and help you make decisions and help you like recenter yourself. So it's a good thing to feel even pain, you know? It's not a good thing to wallow in it, um but feeling it, acknowledging it, and then letting it change you into something better,
Yeah.
that's the real direction
Well,
that you
that's
should
where
go.
the growth comes from.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think it sounds like your mom had a big effect on your family, really kind of just in shaping the way that you process life. How
Oh,
old do you
totally.
how old do you
We had to take assertiveness training classes when we were little kids.
what?
And yeah, there were 2 years where we were never allowed to say the word need in my family. We had to say I want. Everything that we said, it had to be a want and not a need, you know? And it was really interesting because it ended up like leading us to being able to say harsh sounding things to each other, like, "Hey, do you want to come and like do this with me?" And it's like, if you're doing a homework assignment, you say, "No, I don't want to. I've actually got to finish it. I want to finish this assignment." You know,
Yeah.
I've got to, or I have to, or I need to. It's I want to. Everything is a want at this point.
Whoa.
But yeah, no, my mom is she definitely pushed us all in that direction a lot.
That is so cool. I mean, anyway, I mean, some people would think that was really weird. I really think it's pretty cool. I mean, it really, because anyway, it's more real. It's, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And if you, I mean, how many parents shove off their kids saying, hey, I need to do this? And they actually kind of believe it because they're saying it. But in reality, they know, they're like, no, I just either, and kind of sales 101, it's either you're going towards pleasure away from pain. It's like, they're probably just saying, no, I don't want the pressure at work, or I don't want to play with my kid right now. That's just not what I want. And it's like,
Yeah.
so they say I need to. And it's like, it's kind of shapes your reality, it shapes your whole perspective a lot different. So
Yeah, well, and when you feel like you're taking ownership of your own life, I think that makes
huge.
that makes a huge impact as far as like recovery is concerned, because I mean, it leads to less pain because all of a sudden the ball is in your court. You get to decide like what's going to happen, you know?
Well, and it's interesting to know that it's like, because like you were saying earlier, as a student and everything, you're like, suddenly your body's sending you signals and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. You're like, and it's all your body is telling you is, hey, look, we need some recovery. And you're like, it's sending you the signals and you're just like, man, this sounds just terrible. I don't want to do this. And it's like, the thing is, if you really have that same mentality of I want, you can now step back and say, what do I really want right now? And if you're like, I really don't want to do this, you're like, you start to question, you're like, why don't I want to do this? And that's where you'd end up with the magic. And
however, a trick there is not to convince yourself out of, not necessarily to convince yourself out of the things that you're doing, unless you, when in that reexamination that you're talking about, you re-examine the meaning of why you're doing what you're doing. And you say, I was wrong. There is not actually meaning in me doing this. Like, this is part of the reason why I actually think it's really important to write down your, like, a big why statement for why you do everything that you do in life, you know?
right.
And if you can't find a connection for what you're doing to that why statement, it's probably incorrect. But during hard times, sometimes it's difficult to remember, this is why I chose this. And so it's a good idea to write it down so that you can like go and revisit that. And like during the times when it's hard and your brain is like flustered and everything, you're like, why am I doing this? Okay, this is what I said before. And I truly do believe it. I'm on the right path. This is just hard, you know?
Sure. Just recognizing this is a part where you got to push a little harder. You got to go a little longer.
Yeah. It's just, there's just a big workload, you know? But, yeah, well, okay, here's another thing that I want to say about escapism. Escapism actually makes a lot of sense, you know? What we would call fake recovery,
Sure.
or escapism. Escapism actually kind of makes sense. It makes sense why people do it. Think about something like, as you know,
well, and we all do it. Yeah. Like, we all do it.
Yeah, well, think of something as like stupid as like binging YouTube videos for like hours or something like that, you know? What's happening, or something even like more insidious, like watching pornography, you know?
Sure.
Which is another form of escapism. It's a much more extreme form
false
of escapism.
recovery. You think it's going to make you better and it actually just drains you more.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing about it. Even the people like who acknowledge that it's bad but are stuck on it and go to that during times when they feel like just the world is collapsing in around them,
Sure.
What's going on is they're in pain. They are people that are like in some sort of pain. They're not 100% sure where the pain is coming from. But what escapism does for you is it actually gives you dopamine in your, like, into like the actual organism that is you.
Right.
And it numbs the pain for a second, you know?
Right.
It's a really quick fix to just forget about your pain for a minute. But the problem is it doesn't actually solve anything. The quick fix goes away about 5 minutes later. And
where are you? You're left with, you know, a lack of dopamine and all this stress.
Yeah. So that's exactly why like true recovery should come by taking the deep dive into the dark corners of your own negative feelings sometimes.
Sure.
Like slogging through like the mire of feelings and being like, this is the problem. I don't feel like I'm growing in this position, or I feel like everybody's just telling me what to do and I don't get to choose, you know?
Well, like you were saying earlier, you were like, you need to like feel your emotions, don't hide them. And I think the fact is once you feel them and you kind of get to know them, you kind of realize they're not as scary as they seem. Like, I mean, certain feelings at first, especially when you're young, you just think there's nothing worse than, you know, my friends not liking everything I do. But then you find a friend who like calls you on your crap and you're like, wow, I really appreciate that actually. And the fact that you get to know those feelings and you get to actually, I don't know, understand them a little better. I think then, I mean, at least when they come around later, you don't jump into what we were kind of talking about, which is kind of like a negative feedback loop where, you know, you have a hangover and so you drink and you feel better, but that just gives you another hangover, and the problem becomes the solution and the solution is the problem, and you just sink yourself lower.
Exactly. This is part of the reason exactly why I think that this topic is so interesting, especially like I like solving problems. I like fixing things, figuring out what's wrong, and then actually finding the true solution to it. The really cool thing about this situation is that it's solvable. But the problem is a lot of people, they don't think far enough to what the actual solution is going to be. They just keep on going like with the same thing. And I've done this too. Like I've been caught in this rut as well, where I just keep on doing the same thing, maybe even seeking just like escapism and seeking it again and again and again whenever I'm in pain. And the problem just remains unsolved. Whereas if you actually say, okay, hold on, let's recenter, refocus. There's something about my approach that's wrong here. I'm doing something wrong. Then now you have the power to change it.
Well, and it changes you to a growth mindset. You're trying to learn now.
Yeah,
and you're observing yourself.
Either you actually change your approach, like your actual approach to how you're living, or you change your approach to how you think about the way that you're living. Because sometimes like nothing's even wrong, and it's just what's going on in your head.
Right. No, and I think people need to, I don't know, people experience that at different ages. Like, how old do you think you were, whether you knew it or not, how old do you think you were when you actually discovered recovery?
Oh, it's been within like the last year actually that I started running
Crazy,
into
huh?
a lot of concepts. Yeah. I when I was probably 14, that's when I started running into liking to solve problems,
Yeah.
I remember my mom put me on this task. We were living in like an unfinished basement at the time. We didn't have like a whole lot of money and everything like that. And my mom said, "Hey, Luke, you're the man of the house right now." I'm a 14-year-old kid. And she's like, "We don't have a lot of money. We can't buy a new vacuum cleaner, but our vacuum cleaner is broken. So I want you to take this phone that I gave you, and I want you to figure out how to fix it. I've got $20. If you can figure out how to fix it, like in under $20, that would be great, you know?" And I was like, I didn't really know how I felt about that whole like problem, but I just like I sat down and like just spent my whole Saturday taking apart this vacuum cleaner, and I eventually found out what was wrong with it, like the real thing that was wrong with it, and then found out that it was an easy fix. It was it was a $5 fix. I put it all back together, and it worked like brand new and stuff. And I'm just like that led me to that led into kind of like this long line of being like, man, problems are actually a lot of fun to solve.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's not like it's not like a big glorious thing. Sometimes you have to just sit with the problem, work it out, take it apart, look at all the different parts, see if you can understand it, pick it apart with somebody if you can, because that really makes it manageable.
Well, it's such a valuable experience, especially as a kid. I mean, how many parents are like, "Here, let me do this," and they just never teach their kid how to do anything. It's not the kid's fault, but then they end up with this mentality of, "Oh, problems are something my dad takes care of, not me." And then they just haven't built up that strength to where when they hit the hard time, they hit the mountain, they're like, "What do I do?" They don't know how to actually figure it
I
out.
hadn't even thought of that. That's a good point. Yeah. A lot of people are afraid of challenges because they're hard, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think anyway, a big thing you're talking about is just really getting to know yourself, getting to, look at yourself from kind of an outside perspective and reevaluate. A lot of people learn that through meditation or kind of a mindfulness practice. Do you have any kind of meditation that you do or any kind of mindfulness practice?
Yes, I found that there are three things that really help me out, and they're kind of in like a hierarchy of like how much they help me.
Nice.
Number one is, well, I would say actually number three. I'll start at the bottom. Number three is going out on a walk by myself without my phone, and without anything to distract me. No escapism. Like I am left with my own thoughts and my own. If I'm in pain, I'm left with my own pain, and I have to figure it out. I really like doing that, and it's a very meditative process.
Does it change anything for you if it's in the city or in nature, or is it just go on a walk?
Doesn't really matter to me that much. I tend to like to go places where there's not a lot happening, so that I'm not taking in like data through my eyes, you know.
Your brain
Like
has time to kind of
really,
process and sort.
exactly. I'm really just like left alone, like with me, myself, and I. So I found that that one kind of helps. But you can still like distract yourself with just like funny thoughts. So sometimes it's not as effective. Um, you know,
Yeah.
I entertain myself with just like weird things in my own brain, like weird thought experiments or whatever. Okay, number two is like attacking the problem straight on in like a journal. I found that that really helps. If you can write it down and like just work through your feelings and just spew everything out until you're like, okay, I'm recognizing a pattern in what I'm writing here, and
Right.
I'm identifying that this is the problem. And then the third most effective thing that I have found is talk to somebody, because they will have perspectives. If you can talk to somebody who will actually just ask you questions, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe even negotiate that beforehand. Just say, I just need you to ask me questions. I just need you to help me identify what this thing is, you know.
Yeah.
It might take like 20 or 30 minutes, but you'll figure out what the problem is, and you'll figure out a pretty good solution, like working alongside somebody, and you'll feel more connected. You'll feel less alone and less in pain because of it. And I found that that third one, so that's like at the top of the totem pole. If you want to fully recover, go and talk to somebody. Go and
Wow.
talk to a friend or a family member. Some people use therapists. I think that's great, but I think that it's always like filling that role of feeling like connected to somebody for a minute, and being able to break your problems down into like a manageable thing.
Huge. I think everybody got something out of that. I mean, and I think they can all relate to it probably. Do you have, so I believe, kind of like you were saying, some of these things that you do, they're less stressful because it's actually fun to you. It takes less strain on you and on your brain and your
Depends
emotions.
on if I'm in the right mindset. I gotta be in the right mindset.
Well, and that's actually what we're going to get into. I want to know, I think preparation is the key to absolute success. Like, I mean, besides recovery and everything, it's like, if I prepare for how I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to write out what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to get hyped up. I'm going to make sure I'm eating right, that I've slept enough, and then I'm going to have a bomb workout. And so I think,
yeah.
what kind of preparation do you do to get into that mindset or whatever, so that you need less real recovery time? Because we don't all have enough time in the day to do all the recovery we'd like. So what kind of preparation do you do so that you need less specific recovery?
Make sure that you're well rested, because the rest part is important. Sometimes you can just get stressed out and you can forget about kind of like what your center is just by being tired, you know. So make sure you're well rested, and then go out of your way to find people within your support system that you can support and gain support from. That's the best way to prepare. And like to constantly, like, even if you feel like you don't necessarily need it, doing it will keep you in like a mindset and keep you in a place where you'll feel like just the constant flow of energy. You'll feel the constant like abundance of energy inside of you that's like, no, I feel great, I can keep going to this, I can keep doing this, you know.
I think this is so huge. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm like, I just got a book that my brother, oh, it's right here. My brother suggested it to me. It's Why We Sleep. I really, really, really want to read this book, because he was saying it's just amazing how much sleep affects you. Because the thing is, on this podcast, we like to talk about recovery with physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, recovery. And I think sleep actually affects all of them, because physically, I mean, it's going to help you level out, recover, get some energy. Emotionally, it's going to help level out your emotions. I mean, mentally, your brain gets to sort, and spiritually, you get to spend some time just on your own, staying away from the problem, and then you get to reapproach it. And so it's like, I think sleep, like you said, I think it's a common fix that helps most everything.
I would say though that there are times, I'm not sure if you've ever encountered this. I know I talked to Ryder, my brother, who and he and I both run into this problem, where when we are in our bad mindset, we can go to sleep, and we can sleep for like 12 hours at a time. Like,
Right.
if you're trying to avoid a problem, you can sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep, and you will not get up, you know?
Well, and a lot of people have the problem getting up anyway because they're scared of what they're about to have to do.
Exactly. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had that where you were gonna take like a midterm or something like that, and you were like, okay, I'm gonna study all of today, but then like you get tired like in the early part, like partway through the day, and you're like, I'm just gonna take a nap, and you end up taking a nap that you didn't need, you know, and you
Yeah.
know you didn't need it, you know you had gotten like enough sleep or something like that, but you just slept way too long. You're like, I didn't have any of my study time, but I just kept on sleeping because I was avoiding thinking about, shoot, I've got to study for this test. I got to take this test. And you're just like, something's wrong, you know? Something's wrong that you don't want to deal with. And so sleep can become an escapism like method as well. So it's kind of like, that's why I say sleep is incredibly important, because it attaches to everything else, but also make sure that you're doing okay, like up here as well, before you go to sleep.
Cool. No, I like that. And I think if anybody has kind of a journaling habit or anything, like you were saying, writing it down, going on that walk before you go to bed, try and reset a little bit. That might help.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. What's maybe a big lesson that you're learning right now that I think people they're always learning a lesson in their life, and there's something that they're like, I'm learning this right now, and this is just really impactful and it's a truth. Is there anything that's going on right now that's a big lesson you're learning?
I think two of the biggest lessons that I have learned within like the last few weeks of actually, and these lessons like came about on account of me having the recovery conversations that like we were talking about earlier. The two biggest lessons that I've been learning are that truly intelligent people should not avoid doing difficult things. They should seek out difficult things because they're difficult, you know?
Yeah. And is the reason for that because it helps you like grow your talents, or is it because no one else is going to do it, or because what's the reason for that? They need to go attack the hard things because it's going to change your nature. Consistently seeking out difficult things to do, consistently seeking out problems to solve and challenges to overcome, that's going to turn you little by little into the type of person that when you encounter a new challenge in yourself, when you encounter a time maybe when you need to recover, when you encounter a problem at work, when you encounter a challenging concept at school or within your relationships or something like that, it makes it so you have it coded into your nature that you don't shy away from those problems. You don't avoid them. Right.
You don't escape from them. You face them head on, and you think about them in very creative ways, and you solve them quickly, faster than anybody else, and you get your life in order, and you feel fulfilled doing it. I think that if you want to be, I think that if you want to be the most fulfilled, and if you want to be a truly intelligent person by nature, and have that be ingrained into your very nature, you'll be the type of person that you choose hard things to do. You choose challenging things to to put in your life.
I love it. No, I think that's really true. Well, and I mean, we could talk forever. I mean, guys, anyone listening to this knows that they're like, wow, like this is a great, I haven't even been talking. I mean, it's so good to just hear all these really, I mean, real thoughts. And we could talk about this all day, but to that, and we're kind of finishing up here. I want to ask you, Luke, like if everybody in the world was going to see this, what's your message that you would want them to hear today?
You're free. You're in charge. You're in the captain's chair, captain in your own life, and you get to make decisions and change things. And it's not scary. It should be empowering. It should be encouraging, because it means that you get to control where things are going to go. You get to control whether the problems are going to be solved, and you get to control whether you grow and how you grow from them.
I love that. It's like, I mean, it's your life. Live it. Like no one else is going to make these choices for you. Like in the end, it's all about you and what you want and what you're willing to give to get, whatever life you want.
Yeah, totally. Well, and this is another reason why I was actually really excited to come on the podcast, because Mikey, I've talked to you before and I know that you believe these things. I know that you're one of those people that's a go-getter that freaking goes out and just says, here's what we're going to do today. Here's my, this is my purpose and I'm going to go and make it happen. I mean, you starting this podcast, like in general, when you told me about this, I was like, holy cow, I feel encouraged. I feel encouraged. Like I should start like setting some goals that are just things that are powerful and big, and maybe things that like nobody would have expected to have happen or something like that. Maybe even I didn't expect it to happen, and then just go and make it happen. Because
I love hearing that.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like hearing you start the podcast, I was like, geez, I want to be like Mikey.
Whatever. I love big dreaming. I had this isn't related. I want to throw this in here though. I think it's really cool. I love asking people what their name and their brand is, because I can't remember where I found it. I think it was Vanessa Lau's YouTube. And she was saying, she's like, if you want to know what your brand is, she was like, ask all of your family members and ask like your 10 closest friends to each text you the 3 things that they think are your biggest characteristics. And I was like, pretty cool. I only did my family, but what generally came back was that I don't like to dodge around things. I'm going to be a straight talker with you. I'm going to tell you what I think, but I'm kind of funny. I'm a nice guy. You're not going to hate me when I tell you the truth. And the third thing is just that I'm a big dreamer. And I love finding people and being like, okay, I like your goal. Let's times it by like 1,000. And let's cause you're amazing and you can change the world. And when I see people like you, that you have all these skills and talents, just like you said, do the hard things.
But Mikey, people like you really need to exist, because what you do is you empower people and you encourage people to like achieve what they're capable of. Everybody's always like shooting down here, and it's like, no, aim up here,
Totally. Well, and you hear that from rich people, successful people all the time. They're like, I didn't aim high enough. There's no roof. Like, you can change the world, and hopefully recovery helps you get there.
Well, and here's what I really like about this podcast and what you're doing here is that, like I said, it encourages people, it empowers people, and it tells them the truth about themselves, which is that they're awesome,
They're awesome.
and that they can do it.
That's what we should call the podcast. Let's change it. Forget the Mikey Martin show. We need You're Awesome.
You're awesome
recovery. Awesome. Luke, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back again some other time.
All right. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate being here.
Thanks.